Years and years ago, when Maguayan ruled the sea and the terrible captain launched his thunderbolts from above, the water and air were filled with swimming and flying monsters. Those that lived in the air were armed with great teeth and sharp claws. But though they were fierce and savage, they lived together in peace, for they feared the anger of their master captain. In the sea, however, all was not so peaceful, for some of the monsters were so huge and savage and so confident in their strength that Maguayan could do nothing with them. He lived in constant fear of attack from these fierce subjects and finally, in despair, called on Captain to help him in his trouble. Accordingly, Captain sent his swift messengers to every part of the earth, air, and sea, and ordered that a council of all the creatures in the world should be held. He named the little island of Kali in the center of the Sulu Sea as the meeting place, and commanded all to hasten there without delay. Soon the members of the council began to arrive, and the sky was darkened by flying monsters, and the water boiled as the terrible reptiles of the sea rushed to the place appointed. In a short time the little island was crowded with these dreadful creatures. There were huge buayas from Mindanao, fierce tikbalings from Luzon, savage sigbins from Negros and Bohol, hundreds of ungloks from Panay and Leyte, and great wak-waks and other frightful monsters from Samar and Cebu. They grouped themselves in a large circle around a golden throne on which sat Captain and Maguayan, and while waiting the commands of their master filled the air with shrieks and howls. When all the creatures were gone, Maguayan thanked Captain, but the great god said that he had only done his duty in helping his brother. Then he gave Maguayan a little golden shell and explained to him its wonderful power. Maguayan had but to put it in his mouth and he could change his form to that of any creature he pleased. In case a monster defying Captain's orders should attack him, he had simply to change himself into a stronger monster of twice the size of his enemy, and then fight and kill him easily. Now it happened that Sinogo had been standing behind the throne and had heard all that had been said. He was filled with a desire to own the wonderful shell, and in spite of the many favors he had received from Captain, he resolved to steal it. The more he thought of its great power, the more he longed for it. With it he could rule the earth and sea as a god, and by hiding he might avoid the anger of Captain, so he watched for an opportunity to make away with it. Finally his chance came. While handing Maguayan some food, he slyly caught up the shell, and soon afterwards quietly slipped away. For some time his absence was not discovered, but all at once Captain called for his favorite messenger, and, receiving no reply, ordered Daligan to search for him. Soon Daligan returned and reported that Sinogo could not be found on the island. At the same time, Maguayan noticed that the golden shell was gone. Then Captain knew that his messenger had stolen the shell and escaped. He flew into a great rage and swore he would kill Sinogo. We ordered Daligan and Guidala to hasten to the north in search of the faithless messenger and to bring him back a prisoner. But Sinogo was not to be easily caught. Quick as a flash, he placed the shell in his mouth and dived down into the water, at the same time changing himself into a huge crocodile-shaped buaya with scales like armor of steel. In vain Daligan and Guidala rained blows on the monster. The swords could not pierce the heavy scales. Still the rapid flight went on. Straight for Bantayan headed Sinogo, but suddenly changing his course, he dashed into the narrow channel between Negros and Cebu. Then Daligan, leaving Guidala to continue the chase alone, flew swiftly back to Kawi and told Captain that Sinogo was in the little strait. Up sprang the god, and flying directly east, he posted himself at the southern entrance of the channel. In his hand he held an enormous thunderbolt, and thus armed he waited for the appearance of Sinogo. Down into the narrow entrance sped the faithless messenger, tearing up the water in his mad flight, while the brave Guidala struck in vain at his huge body. Suddenly a roar of thunder sounded, and the thunderbolt fell on the back of the monster, bearing him down beneath the waves and then, stiffening like a bar of iron, pinning him to the bottom far below. In vain he struggled to free himself. The bar held him fast and sure. In his struggles the shell fell from his mouth, but a little tambin caught it and brought it safely to Captain. Thousands of years have passed, but far under the water, like a fly on a pin, Sinogo struggles in the form of a huge buaya. The water bubbles around him, and for 3 miles little whirlpools go racing up the channel, and the native in his little sacan avoids the narrow entrance where the water boils and foams, for Sinogo still twists and squirms, and the Lilone is a thing to be feared and dreaded.